Tonight, on First at 9 this Friday the 22nd of August 2025. Trial of the century. Former President Ranil Wickremesinghe arrested by the Criminal Investigation Department, marking the first arrest of a Sri Lankan executive president. Case against the former president heard before the Colombo Fort Magistrates Court. Postal unrest. Striking postal workers will lose this month's salaries, warns the Postmaster General. Riot control unit deployed to Central Mail Exchange as strikers attempt to disrupt postal operations. Vendetta. Suspended prison officer with underworld ties shot dead in Bandaragama. Suspected gunman of the recent shooting in Koskoda killed in a shootout with the SDF. Kite Festival. Derana Signal Colombo International Kite Festival inaugurated with glitz and glamour.
Asian Paint Causeway Aquasif මිලදී ගෙන LED TV run voucher ඇතුළු තවත් හැකි රසක් දිනා ගන්න.
This is Ada Derana First at 9. Live from Studio 24 in Colombo.
Good evening, you're joining First at 9, brought to you by Sri Lanka's premium news provider, Ada Derana. I'm Tarindu Mahendra, joining you live with the latest in Sri Lanka and from around the world. In your top story this evening, former President Ranil Wickremesinghe was arrested by the Criminal Investigation Department today, marking the first arrest of a former Sri Lankan president. Wickremesinghe is accused of misusing state funds for a private visit to the United Kingdom, claiming it was an official visit. Proceedings are ongoing before the Colombo Fort Magistrates Court.
In 2023, former President Ranil Wickremesinghe undertook an official visit to New York to take part in a G77 summit which was held on the 22nd and 23rd of September. While on his way to Sri Lanka following the conclusion of the G77 summit, former President Wickremesinghe had visited London to attend a ceremony in which his wife, Professor Maitri Wickremesinghe, was awarded an honorary doctorate. The invitation for the ceremony was sent by Vice-Chancellor of the University of Wolverhampton, Professor John Rafter, through the Sri Lankan High Commission in London. However, the Presidential Secretariat recently filed a complaint with the Criminal Investigation Department alleging that former President Wickremesinghe misused state funds for a private visit. The CID, which promptly launched an investigation into the complaint, recently brought in former Secretary to the President, Saman Ekanayake, and former Private Secretary to former President Wickremesinghe, Sandra Pereira, for questioning. Thereafter, former President Wickremesinghe was summoned to appear at the CID today. Accordingly, the former President arrived at the CID at 9 a.m., after which statements were recorded for nearly 4 hours. Subsequently, former President Wickremesinghe was then placed under arrest at around 1:15 p.m. He was then presented before the Colombo Fort Magistrates Court at around 3 p.m. Several parliamentarians representing the opposition and supporters of former President Wickremesinghe were seen at the court premises. Thereby, the case against former President Ranil Wickremesinghe was taken up in the presence of Colombo Fort Magistrate Nilupuli Lankapura. Additional Solicitor General Dilip Piris, appearing for the CID, presented facts to court. The Additional Solicitor General stated that an individual named V.S. Karunaratne filed a complaint addressed to the President on the 17th of March 2025, after which the President's office commenced an internal investigation. Thereafter, on the 23rd of May 2025, the Secretary to the President had filed a complaint with the Inspector General of Police with regard to this incident. The complaint contained information pertaining to a visit undertaken by former President Ranil Wickremesinghe to Cuba and America from the 13th to the 20th of September 2023. The Additional Solicitor General said that on the 22nd and 23rd of September, former President Wickremesinghe engaged in a private visit claiming it to be an official visit and thereby misappropriated state funds. Additional Solicitor General Dileep Peiris further presented to court that statements were recorded from 33 suspects related to the incident, after which Ranil Wickremesinghe, the 8th Executive President of Sri Lanka, was named a suspect. Thereafter, he presented to court basic facts surrounding the case against former President Ranil Wickremesinghe. The Additional Solicitor General stated that a team of 10 personnel, comprising officials of the President's office and police, also took part in the visit. Funds spent during a span of 2 days totaled 16.6 million rupees. 13.3 million rupees were obtained by the Presidential Secretariat, while the police and Sri Lanka Navy together provided over 3.2 million rupees for the visit. The Additional Solicitor General further stated that the amendment of official documents to state that it was an official visit remains a serious question. It was also stated that, when questioned, Personal Secretary of former President Wickremesinghe, Sandra Pereira, had first thought it was a personal visit and that the suspect had later mentioned that it was in fact not a personal visit. During questioning, former Secretary to the President Saman Ekanayake had revealed that he approved funds, assuming that the visit to London was a resting day for the former President, as he usually takes a day of rest for himself when engaging in visits of longer duration. Additional Solicitor General Dileep Peiris asserted that former President Ranil Wickremesinghe mentioned that state funds must be spent on any visit regardless of it being personal or official. President's counsel Anuja Premaratne, who represented former President Wickremesinghe, countered the prosecution's argument, citing an internal audit by the Presidential Secretariat. He submitted to court a report from the Auditor General stating that the allegations were not corroborated in that official document. It was argued that the case was only possible due to the President voluntarily revoking his immunity while in office, but that this alone does not justify what he described as a baseless and politically motivated lawsuit. The counsellor also criticized the influence of public speculation, referencing a YouTuber's claim that Ranil would be remanded within 2 days, questioning how such statements could shape legal proceedings. The court was urged to focus on legal merit rather than external noise or political pressure. Furthermore, President's counsel Anuja Premaratne, presenting facts before the court, highlighted the suspect's deteriorating health, citing a 7-year heart condition, uncontrolled diabetes, high blood pressure, and other ailments. He further revealed, for the first time publicly, that the suspect's wife is battling cancer and arthritis. They have no children and rely solely on each other for support, he said, urging the court to treat this as a special circumstance. He also noted that prison lacks proper security for a former president and mentioned the suspect is scheduled to attend the Commonwealth Youth Council in India as the chief guest the day after tomorrow. Premaratne requested bail under special provisions of the Public Property Act. Responding, Ford Magistrate Nilupali Lankapura asked Additional Solicitor General Dileep Peiris for his stance on the National Audit Office report submitted by the defence. Peiris stated the document was a general annual audit, not related to the specific incident in question. He maintained that the prosecution's case is based on a target internal audit conducted by the Presidential Secretariat. Thereafter, the bail application filed on behalf of former President Ranil Wickremesinghe was considered before Colombo Ford Magistrate Nilupali Lankapura. Additional Solicitor General Dileep Peiris, appearing for the prosecution, stated before the court that he would present evidence against the suspect under the Public Property Act. He also requested that the suspect be remanded as the investigation is not complete. However, President's counsel Anuja Premaratne requested that the suspect be released on bail. The magistrate then announced that the proceedings will be adjourned for half an hour and the order on the bail application will be delivered thereafter. Proceedings have recommenced and are still ongoing.
රුපියල් 8900ක මාසික වාරිකයකට brand new TVS X100 යතුරුපැදියක් ගන්න.
Now, amid the arrest of former President Ranil Wickremesinghe, Minister of Public Security and Parliamentary Affairs Anand Vijaypala reaffirmed that the rule of law is being enforced impartially and vowed that ongoing high-profile investigations will continue without obstruction. However, opposition MPs accused the government of creating a media spectacle surrounding former President Wickremesinghe's arrest and warned the government not to involve the judiciary in its political agendas.
ඉතිහාසය කොහොමත් අමතක කරලා යන්න
We
බෑ.
cannot forget our history and move on. Look at the current state the country's law and order has fallen to. A YouTuber states that former President Ranil Wickremesinghe will be remanded for 14 days, a day before he is set to provide statements. In this country, a YouTuber issues orders before a judge does so. What a joke. Postal workers helped the NPP in promoting their political campaign. All stakeholders of the health sector as well as the police also contributed to the NPP's win. But by today, that trust has been broken. The people are stepping up and government institutions have launched strike actions. I want to remind the government that they cannot stop the people by force.
ගෙන ඉන්නවා නම් ඒවා sorry.com කියන එක කියමින් මන් ඉහෙනවා ස්තුතියි.
මේ අවස්ථාවේ
I
අවධාරණය
want to assert that we have empowered the rule of law. The law is being enforced regardless of rank or position. It does not matter whether it's an IGP, a DIG, a minister or a former president. The government will be undeterred in bringing anyone who has committed a crime before the law. The murder of Lasantha Wickrematunge in 2009 was concealed with time. The evidence was being destroyed. We have recommenced the investigation into Wickrematunge's murder. Investigations into the assault of Keith Noya were concluded and the compiled documents were submitted to the Attorney General. The indictments will be served in the future in connection with those investigations. We spoke about the Easter Sunday attacks. The investigations into the Easter Sunday attacks are being launched successfully. We have guided the investigations into the Easter Sunday attack to the right path. The investigations will continue.
යොමු කරලා තියෙනවා. ඒ විමර්ශන ඉදිරියේ සිද්ධ වෙනවා.
The matter that is now gaining much publicity, the arrest of the former president when he visited the Criminal Investigation Department. A few days ago, I believe, there was a YouTuber who was showing his affection in a very inappropriate way, in my opinion. But then this particular YouTuber also went on record virtually announcing that the former president would be arrested. So it appears there is an inspired leak. And this worries us. What does normally happen when statements are recorded? You file a B report before the magistrate. You have a basic courtesy. You give it to a former head of state. Then, if the magistrate felt right, his attorneys could have made submissions and magistrate could have decided whether to remand him or to bail him out. Well, everybody should be treated equally. But then, when it comes to a former president, at least some courtesies, minimum courtesies, should be extended.
දැන් සමහර කියනවා පලිගන්නවා කියලා. ඒ පලිගන්නවා කියන
Some talk about revenge. Certain members of the opposition are standing with corrupt individuals who seek revenge. These are the same people who stole public wealth. They say not to take revenge, yet they stand with those who bankrupted this country, drove citizens into malnutrition and pushed everyone into poverty. However, when someone responsible for these issues is arrested, some parliamentarians begins to make exceptions, claiming that the law is for everyone, yet insisting that former leaders cannot be arrested.
ලොක්කවත් අල්ලනකොට කරන්න බෑ.
අසීරු තීන්දුවලට අපිට
We have to make difficult decisions because the public mandate has to be fulfilled. When we attempt to take such decisions, the opposition calls on us to be more flexible towards a certain class of people.
chance එක දෙන්න.
Amid the continuing postal strike, Postmaster General Ruwan Satkumara states that postal workers who are engaged in the trade union action will not be paid their salaries for the month of August, emphasizing that employees who do not report for duty will be considered as having left the service. In the meantime, a satyagraha was launched at the Central Mail Exchange in Colombo, where the riot control unit had to be deployed as striking postal workers attempted to disrupt postal operations.
The trade union action initiated by postal workers over 19 demands continued island-wide for the fifth consecutive day today. Responding to the ongoing strike action, Minister of Health and Mass Media Dr. Nalinda Jayatissa stated in Parliament yesterday that the government will not reverse its decision regarding the implementation of fingerprint-based attendance and overtime pay. Meanwhile, releasing a statement, Postmaster General Ruwan Satkumara announced that the Treasury has informed that postal workers engaged in the strike action will not be paid their salaries for this month. The Postmaster General further stated that postal workers who do not report for duty will be treated as having left the service. However, many sub-post offices continued operations despite the ongoing strike action.
ඉල්ලීම් අපි අනුමත කරන්නේ නැහැ. මේකේ යටි අරමුණ මහජනතාව තේරුම් ගත්තා.
Nearly 1.7 million bags of post have piled up in post offices as of yesterday, and the loss caused by the postal strike is estimated at around 140 million rupees. In this context, police security was provided to the Central Mail Exchange in Colombo this morning. Afterwards, postal workers engaged in the strike commenced a satyagraha campaign at around 10 a.m. Later, when a group of postal department officials arrived,
walked and attempted to resume parcel services at the Central Mail Exchange. The striking workers prevented them from doing so. Accordingly, at around 3 p.m. today, the riot control unit and military personnel were summoned to the Central Mail Exchange. The postal workers on duty then loaded the parcels onto a bus under the protection of the police and the riot control unit, amid objection from the strikers. However, the relevant parcels were taken away by an army bus. Meanwhile, the strike action of supplementary health professionals across all hospitals under the jurisdiction of the Western Provincial Council continued today. The striking health workers claimed that the Western Provincial Health Services Director arbitrarily decided to transfer officers from hospitals. However, Director of Health Services for the Western Province Dr. Dhammika Jailath stated that the transfers were consistent with government policies.
හොඳම ෆෝන් එකක් ගන්න. ළඟම බාන්ස් එකට යන්න.
Opposition representatives urged the government not to overstep legal boundaries when conducting investigations into past regimes. This was stated following a meeting last night between representatives of several opposition parties.
A special discussion was held last evening in Rajagiriya with the participation of representatives of several opposition parties and former ministers. Following the discussion, the attendees shared their views.
We
discussed the conduct of the incumbent government. I think it is a big issue how YouTubers decide that former President Ranil Wickremesinghe will be summoned to the CID and remanded for 14 days. This is a big joke. If he is to be remanded, then it should be done according to due process. YouTubers cannot decide if he has to be jailed for 14 days. We are questioning if the government is acting in a biased manner. So, investigate anyone you wish, but please leave the judiciary out of it. Forming a coalition is aimed at establishing power. We do not require power. We merely want the government to take the right path. But the government is acting arbitrarily. All political parties have gathered here to discuss the procedure to draft a new constitution in the future. Secondly, we discussed expediting the procedure to hold provincial council elections. That is what we discussed. Almost all political parties joined except one or two. If we want to secure victory, we should all work together. Different times require different approaches. Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa attended a high-level discussion yesterday at the Ministry of Digital Development and Information in Singapore. The meeting focused on acquiring strategic guidance to digitize Sri Lanka's administrative system and public services. A delegation of officials from Singapore's Department of International Affairs also took part in the event, contributing valuable insights and expertise.
Opposition leader Sajith Premadasa, currently on a visit to Singapore, met with officials at the Ministry of Digital Development and Information Technology yesterday to study the country's advanced digital governance model. During discussions with Singapore's Department of International Affairs, Premadasa explored key strategies behind the digitization of public services and administrative systems, seeking practical frameworks for streamlining governance in Sri Lanka. A key focus was Singapore's Smart Nation initiatives. He was briefed on Smart Nation 1.0, launched in 2014 under then Prime Minister Lee Hsien Loong, and Smart Nation 2.0, introduced in 2024 by Prime Minister Lawrence Wong to drive inclusive digital innovation. A suspended prison official with alleged links to the underworld has been shot dead by unidentified assailants in Bandaragama. Meanwhile, the suspected gunman of the shooting in Koskoda was killed in a shootout with Special Task Force personnel.
An individual was shot near the Thunbodia Bridge in Bandaragama at around 6:05 p.m. last evening. The gunman fled the scene after shooting the driver around 29 times, who succumbed to his injuries on the spot. The deceased is reportedly a suspended prison officer and a resident of Panadura. According to the police, the deceased was among the arrestees apprehended for attending the birthday celebration of Ma Kandure Madush in Dubai in 2021. Investigations have further revealed that the deceased had been previously charged with aiding and abetting the murder of the notorious underworld figure known by alias Samyang by acting as an informant. Samyang was killed when an unidentified group of gunmen opened fire at a bus carrying prisoners in Ethanamadala Kalutara. The exact motive behind the shooting has not yet been determined, and several police teams are conducting further investigations into the incident. Meanwhile, an individual was killed during a shootout with Special Task Force personnel at Wavegama in Surya Wava Hambantota. Police stated that the deceased was the gunman of a shooting incident carried out in Kusgoda on the 31st of July. The incident occurred when officers of the Gaul Crime Division and the Police Special Task Force attempted to arrest the suspect this morning based on a tip-off. The suspect has also hurled a grenade at STF personnel during the shootout. An STF member also sustained injuries during the incident.
The Derana Signal Colombo International Kite Festival was inaugurated this evening in Colombo. Meanwhile, a special training session was conducted for the foreign contestants taking part in the kite festival at Goldface Green.
Derana Signal Colombo International Kite Festival 2025.
In a vibrant celebration of creativity and artistry, the Derana Signal Colombo International Kite Festival will be held on the 24th of August at Goldface Green. 500 local contestants and foreign contestants representing 25 countries are set to participate in the kite festival organized by TV Derana, the Sri Lanka Tourism Promotion Bureau and the Sri Lanka Police. A special training session was held today for foreign contestants partaking in the kite festival. 54 foreign contestants, accompanied by Derana representatives, participated in the session. In the meantime, the inauguration ceremony of the Derana Signal Colombo International Kite Festival commenced a short while ago at Cinnamon Grand Colombo. The official theme song for the kite festival will also be launched at the event.
Derana Signal Colombo International Kite Festival 2025.
Welcome back. Sri Lanka's loan demand is expected to surge in the third quarter of 2025, continuing strong growth from the previous quarter. According to a central bank survey, the rise is driven by increased vehicle imports, low interest rates, stronger consumer confidence and an improved economic outlook. Analysts warn that recent rate cuts may be overheating domestic credit, potentially affecting foreign debt repayment. Banks are also boosting rupee lending by mortgaging past dollar inflows via dollar-rupee swaps, limiting the central bank's ability to buy foreign currency. The Colombo Bourse closed in the red today as a result of price losses in counters such as Selinco Holdings, Commercial Bank of Ceylon and DFCC Bank. The All Share Price Index declined 0.32% to close at 20,649.20, while the more liquid S&P Sri Lanka 20 ended 0.31% lower to close at 6,089.84. Market turnover crossed 5 billion rupees. Foreign participation in market activity remained at subdued levels, with foreign investors closing as net buyers, offloading shares or purchasing shares rather worth 89 million rupees. And with that, here's a look at the day's foreign exchange rates. That's all for tonight from First at 9. Thank you for joining. Have a great night.